Hey Beer Geeks, I am at the end of an incredible week down in Cape Town. My first time in the Southern Hemisphere, my first time in South Africa, and it's just been absolutely eye-opening. Not only do you get incredible nature like this, I'm on the top of Table Mountain right now, but just like there's their own microflora here on Table Mountain, there's their own microflora in the brewing scene as well. Lots of excitement that sometimes heralds back to the days of early craft beer in the UK, like excitement around wild ales, around lots of different kinds of IPA, but the beer quality is absolutely incredible. It's all kind of stitched onto this amazing culinary tradition that they have here in Cape Town, which makes for a pretty special little beer scene, even if it is very, very small. So if you're ever thinking about coming to Cape Town, there's lots of advice coming in the next few videos, and it's just worth it for this, isn't it?
Yes.
A few months ago, I was invited to speak at BeerX Africa, the continent's biggest brewing conference held in the stunning, vibrant city of Cape Town, South Africa. As a place more associated with viniculture, I was excited and intrigued to explore the local beer scene, which has been through some tough times. Although craft brewing is nothing new here, microbreweries have really struggled to make their mark. You see, they haven't had to just compete with great local wine and powerful macrobreweries. During the COVID pandemic, alcohol was banned completely, setting the whole scene back years as many breweries went under. Still, as I found, there is some remarkable and unique beer being made here by talented and passionate breweries who have found their own voice in a world where it feels like everything's kind of been said before. Over the next 4 episodes, I'll be retelling some of their stories and showing you why Cape Town has become one of my favourite cities on earth. We're going to start at what feels to me like ground zero for craft beer in Cape Town and maybe South Africa. The place that first started bringing American beer to the tip of Africa and was among the earliest places to brew modern styles itself. If you're expecting to see a warehouse in an industrial park, then think again. The Cape Town beer revolution started on the first floor of a Caribbean restaurant called the Banana Jam Cafe. As it turns out, they were fans of the craft beer channel, so in honour of my arrival they brewed a cask mild and made some probably quite hot wings. Then most of the team gathered to see how I was going to introduce the film. So much audience, just in my eye line. Okay. Hey Biggies, and welcome to Afro Caribbean Brewing, a brewery on the second floor of an amazing restaurant called the Banana Jam Cafe, which is a bit of an institution here in Cape Town. It's been around for a long time and is one of the original places that you could get great foreign and domestic craft beer here in South Africa. And today I'm meeting Greg, the founder, and Jake, the head brewer, and we're going to be tasting a beer which I would say is pretty much as good as Pliny, and I can get away with saying that because the beer that we taste in the video during the brewery tour is in fact a collaboration with Russian River. So this is one of the most important breweries here in Cape Town and in South Africa, and an amazing story of where it went from a Caribbean restaurant to one of the most important craft breweries, probably in the Southern Hemisphere at this point. I've been provided some wings to go with their Jungle Paradise IPA, which I've been told is medium. We'll see if that's the case, but otherwise, thanks for having me, Afro Caribbean. We'll see you in the brewery. Yay! It's a strong medium, my friends.
The only way I can think to describe Greg is as someone you want on your team. He never seems to stop, able to pull together things and moments with sheer willpower, enthusiasm, and probably some belligerence. All important traits if you run a restaurant, brewery, and canning line manufacturer.
Cheers, Greg. So I've flown 15 hours, pretty much due south from London, to eat in a Caribbean restaurant and drink mild.
Yes.
Which is not what I expected from my trip to Cape Town. How did this all come together?
Geez, it started after I lived in England for 2 years, and we had traveled a bit, myself and my girlfriend back then, and we came home. I started back up in the food industry as a chef, well, more of a cook than a chef.
Right.
And then after about a year, I was just like, I don't want to do this. Just working for other people, long hours. I think some of my longest shifts back then were like 30 hours straight.
30?
30, yeah.
Oh God.
I'd done it in England and I'd done it in Israel, and my girlfriend was like, well, let's open a restaurant.
That'll be less work.
Yeah. No, well, at least we were doing it for ourselves.
Yeah, for yourselves, yeah.
So yeah, we decided on a style more in the beginning than a food concept, and that was sort of island style, Gauguin paintings, yellow walls. We wanted like cocktails, vibey spot, and we were researching Polynesian food in a library because back then there wasn't the internet yet. And we came across Caribbean cookbooks, and nobody in South Africa done Caribbean. So that's how we ended up on the Caribbean chain. So,
yeah.
And then we eventually went to the Caribbean to check stuff out, and we worked on some dishes, and we got onto like the curried goat and jerk chicken and sort of even buffalo wings, where people go buffalo wings. But if you've been to the Bahamas, every beach bar does a buffalo wing special, like $1 wings and things like that. So we try, and it's not necessarily like just Caribbean food. We still do other stuff, but yeah, that's where the restaurant started in 1999. I was always into beer, and in 2007, I think it was, Jack Black came out as like, this is going to be the new thing, craft beer. And
So this is like a South African like lager brand.
yeah, so Jack Black wasn't the first, but they were the brand that really kicked things off.
Yeah. Made the idea of like a
They were like, people were
craft
like,
or a small beer.
and
possibly.
in a weird kind of way, restaurants and bars wanted beer on tap then. There was a huge spike in people who wanted beer on tap. And SAB was like, you first have to show us you can do volume and in bottles, then we'll give you a tap. And no one even knew how to assemble a tap. So people,
because in the UK that's how beer is served, but that wasn't the case here.
No. You had to go through a supplier to get your beer served on tap in kegs, and people really didn't understand the concept of owning your own taps. We were actually one of the first to do it ourselves, and that was, we actually had 4 restaurants and sold 3 of them. This all sort of happened around the same time. We moved here. I went from working 17 hours a day, 7 days a week, to 3 hours a day, 3 days a week when we sold all the restaurants. Had a bit of time. We did a trip to the States, and we spent a month driving from San Diego to Portland, just checking out craft breweries and what they were doing and brew pubs. And when we got back, we were just like, okay, this is it. And we actually, the tap system behind you, that U-bar, we actually had specially made because you couldn't buy one in this country.
Right.
So we had it
No
made.
off-the-shelf
No. We had to make it ourselves, and we couldn't even fill the 8 taps in the beginning. And within a year to 2 years, we had 15 taps, and within 2.5 years, we had 30. And that's sort of how the beer thing intertwined with the Caribbean restaurant. And then again, we were importing a bit of beer from the States. The guys were just, all these little brew pubs were popping up. They would send us a keg, and I'd send it back to them. With maybe some Cape Town beer in it, so we were beer sharing. They wouldn't even charge me for the beer. They were just so excited it was going on tap somewhere. And like, I paid for the shipping, they paid for the beer, and we'd do little events with Johannesburg beers on tap or beers from Durban. And that sort of, we started growing that way. And then the exchange rate started getting worse, so we couldn't import beer anymore. And we were like, now what do we do? And then it just sort of came about that I was homebrewing with a friend of mine. And we were like, we can open a brewery, as everyone says.
Yeah, we've all
been down. Yeah.
Mostly
we
decided
can open
against
a brewery, and then we rebuilt the kitchen downstairs, and we were like, let's put a second floor on. Let's open a little, just something we can just tinker with upstairs, which again didn't last very long. We quadrupled the size of it. Again, still not very big, and I think we've achieved a lot in maybe staying small because we can do so many different things. It's been going on 11 years now of the brewery and 25 years of the restaurant.
It's incredible. I was saying earlier that it's pretty unlikely to see sort of Caribbean food done beautifully outside of the Caribbean, and even less likely for there to be a brewery upstairs. It's a truly kind of unique thing that you've put together, and to be able to fill, was it 24 taps with
24 taps with our
with
beers,
your own
and then
beer.
a few others.
Okay, so a couple
So
of
we
guest
do.
beers as
We've
well.
got another 5 beers that are guest beers. So,
Right.
so yeah.
And what's sort of the philosophy behind the beers that you're making? Because style-wise, it's everywhere. Is it tailored to the food, or?
I think it's experimentation. You know, the beauty of, again, with a small brewery and a lot of tanks, you can brew a lot of different things. So, and you can rebrew. A lot of the time, we'll rebrew beers before we've even. We'll still be on tap, and the next batch is being brewed. You can almost taste them side by side. You know, so being able to brew more often, you can dial things in a little bit better and things like that. And then again, you know, when Jake started with me, he was like, I want to be able to brew whatever I want and walk to work. And he lives down the road. And I was like, you go for it. And I think it's what people want, you know, where so many other breweries concentrate on one thing, or there's so much macro beer around. Why not just brew a whole lot of different things? And when I travel, I'll bring back some crazy beers and we'll dissect them and then try and match it here and try and do something like that. So yeah, that's.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a real kind of, I guess, almost magpie approach. Like, so when I first arrived, you just cooked up something that you tasted in
Singapore. Like last night. It was my dinner last night, and I was trying to.
And you used to have a Pilsner or a Kelfon that you've hacked so that you can do side pours of your dark lager.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be visiting the restaurant a couple of times this week. What's sort of your favourite beer and food pairing with the menu? What would you suggest I order when I go downstairs?
Sure. Jerk wings and Jungle Paradise. It depends how hot you like your wings. So Jungle Paradise is our West Coast IPA. It won Best Beer in South Africa in 2019. And yeah, it's part of our core range. It's one of the first beers we did after a trip I did to the States, and we sort of came back, and I think back then the high ABV IPA here was 6%, and we were like, okay, now we're going to go in there with a 7.5. It's quite a malt forward, so it's more old school, and that sort of malt forward backbone holds up quite nicely with jerk chicken. So our jerk wings and that. I think that's the one. That's the one to go for, straight up.
West Coast IPA and hot wings. I don't know. There's not a better way you can spend your day. To be honest.
Or the Better Judgment. Better Judgment and our buffalo wings. Our buffalo wings are very good. So Better Judgment and buffalo wings would also work.
So what's Better Judgment?
That's our hazy.
Right.
It's 6.8. Also part of our core range now. So you have to have a hazy on the core range.
Yeah.
We didn't for a while. Jake made a call.
Yeah, it's truly amazing. Like, you know, obviously, I've travelled all over the world. This is my first trip to the Southern Hemisphere, but I've travelled through all sort of the classic beer nations, and you know, hazy IPA and Pilsner are the two things you see
everywhere
now. There's something universal about these.
Yeah, I think
these two styles.
I think brewers, after brewing enough hazies, all they want to drink is Pilsner.
Yeah.
You know, I generally.
I mean, that must be where it starts in every market.
We even have Bitburger on tap downstairs.
Right.
Just for at the end of a long hazy tasting, you're like, let's have a Bitburger.
So that's almost a staff tap.
It's pretty much, I think it's for Jake, Garth and myself.
Greg's story and the wild concept of the Banana Jam Cafe are brilliant, but it wouldn't be half as interesting if the beer being brewed on this mad little kit on the first floor of a Caribbean restaurant wasn't genuinely world class. But it is. During my 3 visits, I did double takes on hazies and West Coast IPAs, a Czech dark lager on side pour, a mild, a West Coast Pils, several pastry stouts, and even a 3.5% Simcoe session ale. All were beautifully made, perfectly poured, and as fresh tasting as beer can get. Clearly, I'm not the only one who thinks this either. One whole wall of the bar, and increasingly a whole other one, is covered with awards from the African Beer Cup, a continent-wide annual beer competition that was on while I was in Cape Town. Not for the first time, Afro Caribbean took home the most gold. The person behind all these beers is Jake, who seems a modest guy, but is the first person in CBC history to ask me to directly compare one of his IPAs with Pliny the Elder.
So Jake, what a lovely little brewery to get to work in, and with 24 taps to fill, a lot of fun to be had.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're one of the few breweries in the country where we really get to play around a lot and be super creative. So yeah, totally. Like most of what we have going in the fermenters at the moment is one-off stuff, and definitely a lot of fun to be had.
What's your background in brewing? How did you end up as a
So I think like a lot of people started off as a home brewer about 12 years ago. Since then, I've worked in some big breweries up to like 80 hectoliter, 5-vessel Braucon, producing 24,000 liters a shift.
down to
Back
this?
down to this.
Maybe the smallest like dig out hatch I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a big home brewery. Basically, it's super simple. It works well though, and like produces good wort. And I wouldn't say we were restricted by our equipment. Of course, there's things that you can get out of more sophisticated equipment, but it's always a case of learning to work with what you've got and making that work for you. So
and I guess you can produce a huge variety of styles off of that. So there's no real restriction in terms of the creative side. Maybe just the
and that is what we do here.
Yeah.
We are an IPA or hop focused brewery, but definitely brew a little bit of everything. The only thing we don't really do here is mixed fermentation because we don't really have the environment for it. It gets very, very hot, especially up here. We're on the second floor here.
Yeah.
So if you are
having some barrels in there might not be.
Yeah, it gets up.
Might have a lot of vinegar.
It gets well over 30 degrees up here. So we do some barrel aged stuff, but typically we'll fill barrels going into winter, and then we'll leave them in there maybe for 6 months or so and take them out again as it starts to warm up. So maybe something in bourbon barrels or wine barrels, but nothing mixed.
Something where you're looking for the character of what was in there before, not
absolutely
creating new character and
exactly.
Yeah,
so we'd love to play around with that, and we have joked about digging a hole out back and burying a container, but that dream hasn't come to fruition
burying
yet.
urns of wild ales. Yeah. Well, so you've already treated me with a mild on cask, especially for me, and now you've brought out a bottle of Russian River Bliney. But I'm more excited about this. So tell me about this beer.
Yeah, so we've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to brew 2 beers with Russian River, leading up to a beer conference that's happening at the end of this week, which has been an amazing experience. I grew up in beer in the early 2010s, where Pliny was this hype beer that you just heard about.
I could never taste.
Exactly. So I used to look up clone recipes and watch videos of people drinking it in their basement and losing their mind over it. So
I was that guy. Yeah. Well, we were in a bar where they let us bring it in. Yeah.
So eventually getting the chance to taste it many years ago was amazing, and now to actually have the opportunity to brew a beer or 2 beers with Russian River is pretty mind blowing.
Yeah. So having brewed a collaboration with Vinny, I know how detailed his approach would have been. So obviously he couldn't come to the brew day, but what did they sort of contribute?
Yeah, so essentially initially it started with a video call. We spoke a little bit about what kind of beers would be interested in brewing. They very quickly were not interested in brewing hazy IPA.
They do have one, but
I know, he calls it they're not so hazy IPA. So very quickly decided at least one of the beers would definitely be a West Coast IPA. So then it went to which hop varietals we were interested in, to which my response immediately was Simcoe, because they're so well known for Simcoe.
Yeah, remarkable history they have with that hop.
To not have the opportunity to work with Simcoe doing something with them seemed a little bit silly. And then moving into some of the newer stuff that we were excited about, we suggested Nectaron, which is a hop they've also actually incorporated into Pliny and some of the newer iterations.
Yeah, because people don't necessarily realise that it's an evolving recipe.
It's a very evolving beer. Just chatting to him, and I mean, seeing how it's changed over the times, it's an incredibly modern beer. They suggested, which was amazing, that they would send some of their hand-selected hop lots over for us to brew with, which is pretty mind-blowing, especially, as I mentioned to you earlier, like being in a place like South Africa, we don't have the fortune to be able to select our hops at all, which means we've been very impressed with the quality that we get. We mostly use Yakima, but obviously we're at the tail end of the supply chain, and we're pretty much
tailor to your tastes.
And it also means our hops are changing frequently throughout the course of the year. So to get some insight with hops, plus be able to receive lots that are special and for example, with the Simcoe, as I mentioned to you earlier, again, they get to select their Simcoe pretty much before anybody else in the world from the hop farm that originally bred that varietal, which is an amazing thing to receive that type of hop. And yeah, it's been amazing to work with. I do think it's made a very big difference in this beer. They then suggested as an extra varietal that they have been playing around with a hop called Tangier. I'm not sure if you've tasted any beers made with Tangier.
I don't believe I have, no.
So that's a new hop out of Seagull Ranches, I believe, which is quite a small independent hop farm. They've been playing around with that variety for about a year, and they've really liked the results a lot. And he described it as freshly crushed citrus, predominantly orange. So they sent some of that over as well. So this beer is a blend of Simcoe Cryo, Tangier, and Nectaron, all of their hand-selected lots. So,
incredible.
yeah, pretty cool. There's a few differences between the two beers. Piney comes in at 8%. This one comes in at 7%, so it's a little bit on the lighter side. Just trying to, as you start to get into that higher alcohol range, it becomes a bit more tricky to have that aromatic intensity, I suppose, as the alcohol starts to compete with it a little bit. And also, South Africa, I think, generally has a consumer base that's not as experienced as they do in the States.
It's a pint-crushing society.
It's a pint-crushing society. So we tried to find something a little bit in the middle with the 7%. But otherwise, like, on paper, a much more bitter beer than we would typically brew. And we were a little hesitant in that regard. So it was pushing the boat out a little bit. And I won't lie, I dialed it back a tiny bit from... I was a bit concerned that something was lost in translation between their software and our software, and I was like, maybe just pull it back a tiny bit. And now tasting the beer, I wish I hadn't. It probably would have been bang on exactly where it was.
Wow.
But yeah, still super stoked with it.
Let's see. Let's start with that one. Honestly, it sounds like a really exciting...
Cool. Well, let's open both of them.
What's it going to feel like later this week, pouring one of these for Vinny and Natalie?
I think I'm really happy with the beer, so I'm looking forward to their feedback, but I was more nervous going into the brew, just trying to make sure that we execute it properly, and I feel like we've done a pretty good job. So,
well, it looks the part. Nice gentle haze to that.
Yeah, it's not as clear as Pliny.
I mean, the first thing to say is that it's clean as a whistle, all just hop character,
and quite a lot of juiciness, I find, as well, which I think is what balances that bitterness out really, really well.
So it's kind of, I mean, you said orange, so it's in my head, but orange blossom and floral character and soft juiciness. Wow, yeah. That's really sensational. It's such a clean, crisp presentation of like the malt, but just loads and loads of aroma. Just keeps washing over. Yeah. And that bitterness, I rarely say this, is about right. Okay. I wouldn't necessarily say that more would be better. More would be more to style. Yeah. But actually, I think because it's so clean and bright and light and citric, it's actually where I'd probably want it to be.
But yeah, I think we did a good job of hitting the targets that we were looking for on this beer.
Great fucking job. It's really nice. It's a really good beer.
Every time I drink this beer, or Pliny, not this beer, but I'm blown away by how clean it is.
Yeah.
It's just the cleanest beer. It's so precise. For an 8% beer, it drinks amazingly easy.
Yes.
And I think like...
I'm a cropper because of that in their brew.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we're probably not quite there with this one, but I think in terms of hop aromatics and flavour and stuff, it's ticking the boxes for me.
I mean, I think there is, after 3 or 4 sips, an ever so slight kind of tongue coating powderiness, but otherwise it is a West Coast IPA that anybody in the UK would be psyched to have produced. Like it genuinely very, very nice. Should we put it next to
let's try the OG.
The king.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, beers don't look much better than that.
No. Anyway. So, this is, as fresh as we can get it here too. Packaged about 2 weeks ago, straight off the line, air freighted. Not cold chained the whole way, but it's about as good as we can do.
Yeah, and it's still presented really nicely. There's almost, maybe a little bit more kind of, don't know whether it's malt character, but a kind of honeyed sweetness to it next to those.
Definitely. Hops. But in terms of balance, drinkability, you can't beat this, really.
No, I mean, it drinks if anything, feels like a slightly... If it weren't for that sort of
Feels
richer
lighter.
body you have, it feels like
Totally.
really, really fresh.
I do think there's some
Lovely.
similarities between the two beers, though, which is cool.
And it's almost a lesson for people at home that you can produce a beer of that quality, of this collaboration or something like this. And you can produce a beer of this quality or something 10
I mean,
times
we
the
have
size.
home brewers who walk in here these days and they look at this and they go, really? That's what you brew on? And
Yeah.
most home brewers have access to better
Yeah,
equipment.
you have a Grainfather G40 and you've got every bit of technology
No,
that you have
absolutely.
there.
Yeah, this system is very much, it's awesome, but it's very much a touch and feel thing.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's fun to brew on that kind of system, but it's also sometimes nice to have all the bells and whistles.
But I mean, honestly, to produce a beer of that kind of quality, you would wonder why you'd move across.
Yeah.
You know, maybe that's hard to repeat, but you know, the stuff that's coming out is beautiful, and the dark Czech Pilsner, the Tomavi that you put together is stunning as well. So I've had 3-4 beers here, and each one has been incredibly precise. And if you'd asked me what it was brewed on, I wouldn't have said a kit like that.
Such
Which is a
basic
testament to you guys.
No, thank you.
It was a little hard to know what to expect from South Africa's beer culture. It's a country with a recent dark past and troubles that rumble on. It's a place so distant from both traditional Western brewing and the craft beer revolution. And it's an industry that was recently brought to a halt by prohibition during COVID. There's no doubt it's a small scene, but Afro Caribbean is probably the best brew pub I've ever been to. And the only one that might beat it is actually Russian Rivers. The quality of the beer, the food, the unique vibe and the people were all so special, I never wanted to leave. I went 3 times in 1 week, and that still wasn't really enough. That feeling is going to pervade all 4 of the videos I've got for you from this remarkable corner of the world, one of which unknowingly features the beer that would later win Best Beer in Africa. Next week though, we're visiting perhaps the best known brewery from the Cape Town area, a place known for incredible hazy IPA and a beautiful beachside location. Sadly, I only witnessed the former.